I'm Dr. Suzanne Bartington, a clinical research fellow in environmental health at the University of Birmingham and an honorary consultant in public health with the UK Health Security Agency. And my research focuses on the health impacts of air pollution from birth to old age and the implications of these for environmental public policy. Oxford has recognised air quality challenges not dissimilar to many cities and towns in the UK. So air pollution affects health in many different ways. Most will be familiar with effects on the respiratory system, so it increases the risk of respiratory diseases such as asthma and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, but it also affects many other organs in the body. So exposure, particularly long-term, to high pollutant levels will increase the risk of stroke, coronary heart disease, lung cancer risk, and also adverse birth outcomes, including prematurity and low birth weight as well. There's a whole range of wider health conditions which have been associated but not causally, so not directly linked to air pollution as a cause as well, and those include decline in cognitive function leading to dementia as well. So air pollution is particularly harmful to certain groups, and that includes children because they are smaller, their body have a higher ventilation rate, so their breathing rate is higher in relation to their body mass as a whole compared to adults. They're also rapidly developing, so their organs are still growing. And with children, for example, we know that exposure to nitrogen dioxide, which is a gas strongly associated with petrol and diesel vehicles, actually results in a smaller lung size because their lungs don't grow to the full potential through to adulthood. Also, adults who have pre-existing health conditions, so I already mentioned that air pollution increases the risk of outcomes such as stroke and heart attacks, but those who already have an impaired circulatory system or heart and blood vessels that aren't working to the full potential will be more likely or more susceptible to those impacts. And then we have people with chronic lung conditions, particularly those with asthma, and asthma can be precipitated by exposure to high pollutant levels, even over short time periods. Elderly people, so I mentioned this impact of air pollution on the brain. That's both directly through the olfactory epithelium, sorry, very long word, but that's that essentially goes up through the nose directly to the brain, and also via the circulatory system because the blood obviously supply goes to the brain through those vessels. And pregnant women, and air pollution particles, that's those solid, very small, tiny solid particles have been visualized in the placenta of unborn babies, and we know that it affects them via their mother before they are born. There's some really interesting evidence that's emerged actually directly from Oxford. So our research group, in collaboration with the University of Oxford and Oxfordshire County Council, have undertaken a study looking at what happened during COVID-19 pandemic when we know there were dramatic changes in the way people travelled. So in Oxford City, we saw around a 70% reduction in motorised traffic in the inner city. So we looked specifically at the high street during the first lockdown. So that's April, May 2020. And we were able to analyse that and use it as a natural experiment to see what happens if you take that amount of traffic out of Oxford, which we wouldn't normally see on that scale for that prolonged period. What happens to air quality? But because of the factors that also affect air pollution, we had really warm weather at that time, and we know that overall air quality is improving anyway in Oxford, generally due to changes in industry and cleaner vehicles. we needed to account for all of those effects as well. And when we did that, we found that actually the level of nitrogen dioxide, which is one of the key gases we're concerned about in central Oxford, reduced by about 20%. So that 70% reduction in traffic translates to about a 20% reduction in nitrogen dioxide. It didn't remove all of it. And that's partly because of the contribution of other sources other than traffic, so industry, for example. In the second lockdown in October 2020, we didn't see such an effect, and it was relatively marginal because there was a lesser traffic reduction. And secondly, we've done some research which has looked at exposure in different transport modes, so whether you're walking, cycling, or in a vehicle, or in a bus, or on a train. And we found that there are very short-term high pollutant exposures that happen particularly at transport hubs. So for example, at Oxford rail station, passing through interchanges. And we also know that actually the exposure to particles can be higher when you're walking and cycling rather than in a vehicle, but the activity benefits of doing that and getting your heart rate up totally outweigh any negative impacts of that higher exposure. So overall, it's better for health to be traveling by foot or bike compared to being in vehicle. And we know that from many studies in other settings around the world.